Hi, College Math. Here is our video for section A.2, fractions, decimals, and percentage. Our objectives are to review converting between fraction, decimal, and percentage forms, and then to solve problems involving percentages. I don't think I mentioned this in class, but you do not need to copy down the objectives. That's mainly just for my sake to have them there. And we also just to kind of know what the lesson's going to be about, but you do not need to copy into your notes if you do not want to. Yeah. So the idea is that we're going to look at, just review kind of how to work with fractions, decimals, and percentage, go in between them. That way we're kind of fluid in those, which is going to be really important when we get to probability. Okay. So in our first example, we're going to review just exactly that, kind of going in between all three forms by filling out this table. Okay. So we'll round to do decimal places when we need to, and simplify all fractions when we need to. So we're going to start with this first one. We have a fraction of 1/4. 1/4, it's kind of a popular fraction. A lot of us know it already because we like to refer to it sometimes as like a quarter. And so that kind of tells us, oh, the decimal form of that, we already know it's 0.25 because that one's kind of a popular one. Okay, so that decimal form we already know. And the percentage, to go from decimal to percentage, we take our decimal point and we're going to move that 2 places to the right. Okay, so that's going to give us 25%. Okay, so once we move to the decimal place to the right 2 spots, we just attach the percentage symbol at the end. Okay, now for the fraction 3/7, that one is definitely a decimal that we do not know. So what we can do is put that in our calculator. Just do 3 divided by 7. So 3 divided by 7 is going to give us 0.428. Okay, and actually it gives us, no, yeah, I was right, 0.428. And I'm going to write this here in the corner because we're rounding to 2 decimal places. So in this case, this is actually going to give us 0.43. Okay, and so then from there, we just convert to our percentage form. So we just got to move the decimal place twice over to get 43%. Okay, it's not exactly 43%, but for our sake, since we're rounding to 2 decimal places, it'll be 43%. Okay. Now we are given the decimal of 0.225. So let's kind of go with what we know. We can convert it to percentage by moving the decimal place twice over. So we have 22.5%. We're allowed to have the decimal point in a percentage value. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you ever see that, no big deal, right? We've seen that kind of percentage before in our lives. The slightly trickier one is the fraction. It's not too hard, but there's a little bit more involved, okay? So if I think about this decimal value, 0.225, that's kind of the short cheating way of saying it, 0.225. The real mathematical way of saying this is 225 thousandths, because this last value ends in the thousandths place, right? Remember, this is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. So 225 thousandths. Well, the way I said that, I can actually write it as a fraction. 225 thousandths. Okay, so that's where you start. You start by just using the place value as the denominator and then putting the number in the numerator, right? So if I wanted to try a different example, let's say 0.52. This is 52 hundredths. So then I would write that as 52 over 100. Okay. So then the next thing I want to do is make sure I have simplified the fraction fully. Okay, so this is not simplified because I can divide into both of those values, 25. Okay, so let's go ahead and divide both of those by 25, and we're actually going to get 9 over 40. And I'm going to check my math really quick because I tend to make mistakes with little math. There we go. Yep, 9 over 40. And then just to make sure, we look at 9 over 40 again. Is there another number that I can put into both? Nope, because the only factor of 9 is 3 in itself, and neither of those go into 40. So 9 over 40 is our fraction form for 0.225. Okay. Last one, we're in a percentage. We're given 83%. Well, this one's easy enough to go to decimal. We just take the decimal point. If you don't see a decimal point, it's automatically behind the last value. near the ones place, so right here. And if I'm going backwards from percentage to decimal, then I move it to the left instead of to the right, okay? So this is gonna give me 0.83. And then I do the same thing to convert it to a fraction, okay? This is 83 hundredths because this 3 is in the hundredths place, the second place. So I have 83 over 100, okay? And now this one does not simplify. This is as simplified as it gets. So that is our fraction form, okay? So that is kind of just a little bit of a refresher on how to go in between all three of these forms, okay? Now let's go ahead and answer a few more questions, okay? This next example is designed to kind of give us a little bit more review of solving equations because we're going to be solving plenty of equations this semester. And I think the skill that kind of gives in the past the college math students the hardest time is kind of getting rid of the number next to a variable, especially like in part C where it's a fraction. So let's start with A first. We're going to solve the equation, write our answers in decimal form, and then round to two decimal places when we need to. So to solve this equation right here, I have 125 times x, change my color here, equals 5. So here to undo the 125 times, I gotta divide by 125 because the opposite operation of multiplication is division. So what do I do to the left? I gotta do to the right. Okay, so I get x is equal to 5 over 125, and you'll pop that into your calculator. Okay, and so that's gonna give us 0.04 exactly. We don't need to worry about rounding in this case. Cool. Let's look at the next one, 7y equals 15.3. Same thing here, divide both sides by 7. I get y is equal to, let's go ahead and throw that in our calculator as well. 15.3 divided by 7 is going to give us, I'm just going to write out a few decimal places here, 2.185. Okay, and we don't need to worry about the rest because we just need that third one to round our second place. It's a 5, so that's going to force this 8 to go up to a 9. Okay, so 2.19 is our y. And if you noticed in class and then in this video, I'm using a lot of this symbol right here. Remember, that means approximately because it's not equal to. It's definitely not exactly 2.19. This is to show that I've rounded my answer or that it's an approximate answer, not exact. Okay, I forgot to box this one. Last one for this example, 20 equals 4/5 x. This is the one that gives students in the past a hard time. One thing I could do here is just start by writing that variable on the left, just because typically we're comfortable with it there. We don't have to do this, but typically we like having the variable, our x, on the left. I'm multiplying by 4/5, okay? Another way to think about getting rid of multiplication, over here I divided by 7 and over here I divided by 125. So the natural instinct here is to divide by 4/5, but dividing by fractions is kind of annoying. So another way we can think about this is, well, if I want to get this to 1, because then that'll be just x, I can multiply both sides by the reciprocal of this 4/5, okay? And the reciprocal is just the flipped version, right? So in this case, it's 5/4. So I'm multiplying the left-hand side by 5/4 and the right-hand side by 5/4. Over here, this undoes each other because 5 times 4 is 20, 4 times 5 is 20, 20 divided by 20 is 1. So this kind of just becomes 1. So we're left with x. And then over here, this is 20/1. So I multiply across, I get 20 times 5 is 100 divided by 4. That's going to be 25. And so here I don't need a round, so I just have x equals 25. Okay. And now for one last set of problems, we're going to go ahead and work with some percentages, just taking percentages of numbers, okay? And you see that come a lot often in, outside of the classroom when you're trying to figure out how much to tip, if you're wanting to leave a 15% tip or a 20% tip, or you see that really, that thing you want to buy and you see that it's 30% off. You want to figure out, okay, how much am I going to spend then if it's 30% off? Doing kind of these problems kind of helps you to just kind of be able to be fluid with how to take percentages, right? And being able to do those markups, and finding tips. So part A, what is 45% of 70? There's not a lot of work we have to do here because this is kind of like the basic type of problem, finding a percentage of a number. Whenever I want to find a percentage of a number, all I have to do is take the percentage, convert it to a decimal. Okay, we're always going to convert our percentages to decimals when we're working them in an equation. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this as 0.45. I don't see a decimal, so by default, it's behind the ones. Okay, so in this case, the 5, move it over 2 places. So 0.45. And when I'm taking a percentage of a number, I take that decimal form and multiply it by that number. Okay, so 0.45 times 70. Pop that into your calculator, and you're going to get that this is equal to 31.5. Okay, so there's our answer for that first one. 31.5 is 45% of 70. In the next few parts is where it gets a little bit trickier, and we're maybe going to have to rely on an equation. So 67% of what number is 12? So I'm taking a percent of a number to get 12. Let's go ahead and kind of translate this into symbols, okay? So I have my 67%. When I see the percent, I immediately think, let's go ahead and convert that to a decimal. So my decimal's here, move it to the 2 places over to the left. So 0.67 of what number? So my what number, my mystery number, let's call that X. I'm taking 67% of X to get 12. So 0.67 times X is going to equal 12. And now I can just solve this equation. It's kind of like the ones we solved in the second example. So I divide both sides by 0.67. Okay, and then we're going to throw that into our calculator. 12 divided by 0.67 is going to give us, we'll round, I didn't put in the instructions, but let's round to 2 decimal places here. X is about 17.91. Okay, there's a 0 after this one. That 0, since it's less than 5, will not bump that 1 up. We're going to leave it as 1. Okay, so there's our missing number. 67% of 17.91 about is 12. Okay, let's keep going. Part C, 89 is 120% of what number? Okay, so 89 is going to be my result because I'm taking 120% of some number. Okay, I can call this my X. All right, so 120% of X. My decimal is here by default after the ones. Move it over 2 places. Okay, so my decimal form for 120% is 1.2. And that's okay. It's okay to have a number bigger than 1 for a percentage. That just means you're going over the whole, right? Since the whole is 100%. So 1.2 times X is going to give me 89. Okay, same thing. Divide that left-hand value over, divide by 1.2 to figure that out. So 89 divided by 1.2 is going to round off to 74.17. 74.17. Okay, because what this gives us in our calculator is 74.166, and it kind of repeats. So that 6, it's bigger than 5, so it's going to bump this 6 up to a 7. Okay. Last one, 15 is what percent of 90? So here, I don't know my percent. The percent is what I'm solving for. Okay, I'm still going to call that X because that's what I'm going to solve for. I'm taking a percent of 90. So I'm taking an X percentage of 90, which means I'm going to multiply that 90 by X to get 15. Okay. This is going to be some decimal value. So let's figure out what that is. Divide both sides by 90. Oops. And so 15 divided by 90 is going to give us X is approximately, we'll round this off, 0.17, okay, because we get 1/6 repeating, so it'll be 1/7. Now this is the decimal form, okay, because when we're working an equation, the percentage value is always in decimal form. So now I have to convert to percentage, so convert to percent, because when I work in an equation, the numbers that get spit out is in decimal form. I never spit out a percentage in an equation. So then this is going to be about 17%, because I take this decimal, move it over 2 spaces to the right. Okay, so that's my percentage approximately. All right, so that was 8.2, kind of reviewing fractions, decimals, and percentage. Hopefully this sounds good. Like I mentioned in class, if you ever have questions from these videos, don't be afraid to, put a star next to the example that confused you and ask me during class. Okay, that is definitely something you can do, and I would love to clarify that for you before you work on the practice. Okay, all right, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.